that not one of his words fell to the ground without it happening. I'm thinking about Solomon's temple. Do you know that the presence of God was so real, it was so tangible that the Jewish priests couldn't even stand? Right. They were flattened. What if there is a modern day psalmist who has learned how to worship God, that has been under the new covenant glory for 10 years, 24/7. Could you imagine what would happen?
People would run up to the front. The pastor stood up and he gave an altar call, and people would run to the front, even pushing people out of the way to get to the front. And people they're falling down on the ground and they're shaking, and some of them are crying, some of them are laughing, and I'm like, ah! I don't know what's going on, because I'm used to going to church, where we're in control. We don't lose control like that. So my very first impression was actually that this is not right.
Okay, they prayed for you. What happened?
Well, it was the third night. The first 2 nights, I actually ran to the side. I wouldn't get prayer. The third night, my mother-in-law comes and takes me by the hand and walks me up. She's not going to probably let me be with her daughter unless I get prayer. So she brings me up, and the guy I'm standing in front of, all I can think of is, don't let him look in your eyes. Don't let him look in your eyes. So I'm standing there like this, like, oh, what's going on here? And all he does, he begins to speak against religious spirits. And in my mind, I'm thinking, me religious?
For generations,
yeah,
the pastors.
You guys are the freaks. I'm normal. I'm a normal Christian. And all he did, he just spoke to that. He didn't touch me. He didn't do. All he said was, God, I just pray for more. And I didn't even know more what. All of a sudden, it felt like 1,000,000 gallons of water just dumped on me. And I fell face first to the ground. And I'm laying on the ground shaking. And all I could think of, and I cried out loud, I said, God, if this is so real, why am I so afraid? And I felt God speak to me and say, because for 21 years of your life, you've been in church, but you've never been in my presence. And I realized at that moment, laying on that floor, I'm laying on that floor and I'm realizing I was able to do church all those years, and I didn't even care if he showed up. I don't even know that I knew it was even possible that he would show up. And so I had been going through the motions of church and not experiencing the power of God or the presence of God, but I didn't even really care.
I want you to go to the music set, but I'm going to tell you something. He's going to sing a song. I requested, we switched this at the last minute because the presence of God is so awesome. It's reign over me, R-E-I-G-N. God, reign over me. But I'm going to tell you, presence of God. And one day his pastor says, I want you to lead worship. He can barely play chopsticks. He's like, what? But under the presence of God, all things are possible. How many songs had you written before that?
None.
None. Did you get that? Zero. How many have you written now?
Probably a couple hundred. Yeah.
That is what happens when an ordinary person has an extraordinary God and soaks in the presence of God. That's what happens. So,
body, they don't even know how long she has to live. And within a couple weeks after that, they went in, tested, took out 3 lymph nodes, checked everything, and they came back and said, you know what? We can't find even a trace of melanoma.
That's the God that we serve.
Yeah.
That's our God.
That's right.
I'm going to tell you something. There's only one person that matters. You're worried about, you're sweating the small stuff. There's only one person that matters.
Supernatural.
Hello, Sid Roth here with Dustin Smith. And Dustin, here's the question that I have for you.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. I've been to your congregation,
yeah.
World Revival. I've spoken there. The presence of God is awesome. The worship is awesome. But what happens when you're home, alone, or with your family? Do you have the same presence of God? Well, yeah. Tell me the truth now.
No, honestly, what happened to me, it's Smith and even, but now even going through my life, like when I was touched by the presence of God, it ruined me for regular church. It wasn't church anymore. It was where now it's like it's my marriage, like my wife. When I walk away from my wife at home and I go to she's at work and I'm in another place, her thought process, she's always on my mind. When I make a decision, I'm thinking about, I wonder if my wife is going to like that I'm buying this or not. But that's the way it is now. It affects my home. It affects my kids. My kids are being raised up in this.
Is there glory in your home?
In my home. It affects everything. It's an atmosphere.
When people take your music and play it in hospitals 24/7, what happens to them?
Well, we're finding out that healings are happening, first of all. People are being touched miraculously. But we're also finding hope. We're finding that even though nurses that walk in and the doctors that walk in are commenting on how peaceful the room is, and they're saying that it's actually permeating into other rooms. The people next door want to know what's happening in that room.
Tell me about that 13-year-old girl that had night terrors. Some of you have children that have bad dreams, and really they're terrified. Tell me about her.
I didn't even know it at the time. I prayed for a little girl, and she looked just depressed. At 13 years old, you're thinking like, what is wrong? And so I'm praying for it. All of a sudden, it's almost like you can see depression bow